Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. Tonight, I'm sharing 8 true and deeply unsettling stories about Halloween nights that went wrong in ways no one expected. These tales remind us that some traditions, like trick-or-treating, might be hiding more than just harmless fun. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with someone who still loves Halloween a little too much. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from, or if anything strange ever happened in your neighborhood. Now then, let's begin. It was Halloween night, and the streets of Briar Lane were packed like always. Kids in werewolf masks and princess gowns darted from door to door, plastic pumpkins swinging, sugar highs already kicking in. I was 13 that year and determined not to let the night feel childish. Me, Noah, Emma, and Caleb had a different plan. We called it the Dare Run. After hitting the regular houses, we'd head down the dead end past Maple Court, where the broken sidewalk disappeared into overgrowth. At the very end stood the Jennings place, boarded up for as long as any of us could remember. People said the house used to belong to a hoarder or a recluse, or maybe someone who went missing. Either way, no one had lived there in decades. Caleb tried to back out. Of course, he always talked big when we were walking. But the second things got quiet, his voice dropped. "Come on, Tyler," he whispered. "The place looks like it's leaning forward." Emma just smirked and kept walking, flashlight bouncing against her leg. Noah had his phone out, recording everything like he was making a documentary. He didn't say much, but he always noticed the weird stuff first. That's probably why he was the one who spotted it. The upstairs window, glowing dim behind the dust-caked glass. A pale yellow light, flickering like an old candle, though we all knew the house had no power. We stopped at the front gate, or what was left of it. The iron frame was rusted, wrapped in vines, and the latch had snapped off. Still, we hesitated. There was this hush that settled over the yard, like the kind you hear right before someone opens a closet they shouldn't. I should say something here. I don't think I was scared yet. Not really. But I do remember a tight feeling, like the air around us had changed. It wasn't cold exactly, but it had weight. And that flickering window, it felt like someone inside was waiting. "Okay," I said, putting on the voice I used when I didn't want to sound nervous. "First one to step inside gets double candy. Last one's got to carry Caleb's bag the rest of the night. They're also worn." "Hey," Caleb muttered, but the others laughed. I pushed the gate open, and it didn't squeal. It just moved. Too easily. That should have been the first real clue. The porch creaked under us, sagging in the middle like it had taken too many steps. Emma ran her hand along the siding, then pulled back with a frown. "It's warm," she said, like someone's been touching it. We all looked at her, then at the door. Noah reached for the handle. "Guys," he said softly, pointing to the corner near the stoop. There was a scarecrow. At least, I think that's what it was supposed to be. The straw was gray, like it had soaked in something, and the burlap sack head didn't have a face drawn on, just a deep tear across where the eyes would be. "I don't remember seeing that walking up," Emma said. Neither did I, but none of us wanted to say so out loud. We stepped inside. The floor let out a soft groan, as if surprised to feel weight again. The air hit us like wet cloth. Dusty, thick, full of something bitter like mold, and something sweet like rot. I clicked on my flashlight, but the beam shook, flickering. The batteries were new. Noah scanned with his phone camera, while Emma lit the opposite wall. There were dozens of framed pictures, all of them in black and white, all of kids in Halloween costumes. Most were faded, water-damaged, but in almost every frame, the faces had been scratched out. One photo made me freeze. A kid in a cowboy outfit, about our age, standing on the same porch we just crossed. The belt buckle, the hat, the fake revolver holsters. They were all identical to what Noah had on tonight. I looked at him, but he was still filming, squinting at the next photo like he hadn't noticed. I don't like this, Caleb whispered. Let's just say we did it and go. It's Stafford's self. We didn't answer. Something had shifted. It was like the house had stopped watching us from afar and started watching up close. We moved deeper into the hall. Noah wandered ahead, around a corner near the stairs. Emma and I stayed behind with Caleb, who refused to move from the entryway. Just 2 minutes, I told him. We're not going upstairs. In the quite right. But Noah didn't answer when we called. A few seconds passed. Then we heard a sound like a creak, a door shutting, and then nothing. Noah, I called out. Quit messing. He's self. Emma shined her light toward the hallway, but it was empty. Maybe he went up, she said, though her voice was flat. Tyler, we should. Then her flashlight landed on something at the top of the staircase. It was Noah's bag of candy, torn open, a trail of wrappers leading to the room on the right. His phone lay beside it, the screen glowing, recording still. But there was no sign of him. And that was the moment we knew. He hadn't wandered off. He'd been taken. I remember grabbing Noah's phone, almost dropping it when I saw the screen. It was still recording, but the video was just black. No sound, no movement. Only at the very end of the clip, for about half a second, there was a flicker of light and what looked like teeth. I told myself it was nothing, just some glitch or trick of the shadows. Emma was staring at the candy bag like it might move. Caleb whispered that we should leave and come back with someone's dad. But I couldn't make my feet turn around. Not without knowing where Noah had gone. We're not leaving him, I said. I meant it. Emma hesitated, but nodded. Caleb groaned and muttered something about us all dying like in those found footage movies. But he followed. We climbed the stairs. Each step creaked under our weight, dry and hollow. The air got tighter somehow, like the house itself was narrowing. I kept thinking about those scratched-out photos on the wall, how none of the kids had faces anymore. At the top, there was only one open door. It led to a small bedroom with peeling wallpaper and a low ceiling. Toys were scattered on the floor, faded and half-broken. In the center of the bed, under a dusty quilt, lay Noah. He was curled up like he'd just taken a nap. At first, I thought it was a joke, that maybe he'd gotten us back for the scare. But when we shook him awake, he blinked slowly and looked around like he didn't recognize us. His voice was groggy. I was listening, he said. Someone was singing. Is that repeated, friend? We're recruiting fast. Emma put a hand on his shoulder. We have to go, she said. Now, this no wation. We pulled Noah up and started down the stairs. I remember how quiet it was. Even Caleb wasn't breathing loud anymore. Everything felt paused. Then my flashlight flickered again. And for the first time all night, it didn't die. It lit up full and steady, cutting through the hallway in front of us. That was when I saw it. The front door. Open. I don't remember deciding to run. We just did. I grabbed Noah's arm. Emma grabbed Caleb's. And we sprinted across the porch into the night air. The moment we hit the yard, I swear the ground felt softer. Like the grass wasn't really grass anymore. It squished. Caleb suddenly shouted, stumbling, Guys, I'm stuck. I can't move. With eyes down, I spun around. His foot was sinking into the dirt near the old flower bed, the soil pulling at his leg like it was swallowing him. He was trying to yank free, but something held tight. And then I saw it. A hand, gray and damp, rising from the earth. Its fingers wrapped around Caleb's ankle. Help me, he screamed. I dropped the flashlight and lunged forward, grabbing his arms. Emma is already there, digging her heels into the ground. The hand jerks backward and Caleb's whole leg disappears. Hold on, I shout. Do not let go. It is bright now. Emma fumbles for the flashlight, picks it up, and points it toward the flower bed. The beam lands on the hand. It freezes. The skin starts to crackle. Another hand rises beside it, and then another. Little arms, small shoulders, heads, dozens of them. They look like kids made of burlap and ash. Eyes missing, mouths sewn shut. They move wrong, twitchy and slow, like they are not used to having bones. Emma shines the light straight at the nearest one, and it recoils like it's burning. That gives us just enough time. I pull. Hard. Caleb screams and kicks and finally pops loose like a cork from a bottle. We fall back into the dead grass, just as the hole slams shut behind him. We do not stop to look. We run. Down the hill. Through the alley. Back into the real part of the neighborhood where porch lights are on, and adults laugh over bowls of candy. Later, we tried to make sense of it. Caleb had scratches around his ankle, thin and sharp like splinters. Noah barely remembered anything after going up the stairs. Emma refused to talk about what she saw. The next morning, I walked back to Briar Lane with my mom. The house wasn't there. Not burned down or condemned. Just gone. The lot at the end was a flat patch of dirt with a faded wooden sign that read, "Lot for sale." Since 1996. But here's the part that sticks. That night, after everything, I emptied my coat pocket and found the flashlight still there. I hadn't even realized I kept it. I left it on my desk. And around midnight, without anyone touching it, it turned itself on. Halloween was always my brother's favorite night of the year. Alex loved the costumes, the decorations, the crunch of leaves under his sneakers. He was only 6, so it made sense. Me, I was 11, and I was starting to feel like I was getting too old to enjoy it the same way. But that year, I promised Mom I'd take him trick-or-treating around our block. Just an hour, then we had to be back. She packed us glow sticks and flashlights and reminded me, like always, to check his candy before he ate any. I took that part seriously, maybe a little too seriously. Alex was dressed as a tiny pirate, with a foam sword that squeaked every time he swung it. I wore a hoodie and a skeleton mask I'd reused from last year. We hit the usual houses first. The Wilsons, the house with the fog machine and strobe lights, and the one where the lady always gave out full-size candy bars. Then, near the end of the street, we saw something unexpected. The house at the far corner, Mr. Luke's, had its porch light on. That might not sound weird, but it was. In all the years we'd lived here, Mr. Luke never handed out candy. He was an old man who barely left the house. Some kids said he used to be a school janitor. Others said he was just mean. But now, not only was his porch light on, there was a big orange bowl sitting on the top step, filled to the brim with wrapped candy. A printed sign beside it said, "Take one. Happy Halloween." I felt Alex tugging my hand. "Let's go," he said, bouncing a little. "Come on, June." In Dozenkarn, I hesitated. The house looked wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but something about the way the lights flickered behind the curtains made me pause. Like they weren't real lights at all. Just something pretending. "We can skip it," I said. "We have plenty of candy already." There is a spot, but he never gives any. What if it's, like, special candy? Alex was already walking up the steps before I could stop him. I followed, heart thumping a little harder than it should have. Up close, the bowl looked ordinary, just cheap plastic, and the candy inside was wrapped in black and red foil. No brand names, no fun-size logos, just glossy wrappers that crinkled strangely when touched. Alex reached in and grabbed one. Before I could say anything, he popped it in his mouth. "Hey," I stepped forward, trying to fish out the wrapper. "You're supposed to wait until we're home." He was dead as sex. He made a face. "It's weird," he said, chewing. "Tastes like cinnamon and dirt." "Bill and Taction." "Spit it out," I said. But he didn't. He just swallowed, grinned, and skipped back down the steps like nothing had happened. We didn't talk much on the way home. I kept glancing at him, waiting for something to happen. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a stomachache or a nosebleed. But Alex was fine. Too fine. Later that night, after our parents had checked the candy and sent us to bed, I passed his room to say goodnight. He was standing in the dark, staring into his bedroom mirror. Alex. I flicked the light switch. He turned. Slow. He's almost here, he said, voice flat. Who? Road no. Alex blinked, then smiled like nothing happened. Nobody. Just joking. Is not Ted not, is not. But it didn't feel like a joke. I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about the candy. The wrapper I took from his hand was still in my pocket. In the morning, I pulled it out. The inside was lined with faint handwriting and smudged black ink. I squinted to read it. Don't eat the last. I didn't know what that meant. But by then, I already had a sick feeling in my gut. Something was wrong with that candy. Something was wrong with Alex. And I hadn't seen the last of it yet. The next night felt off before it even started. Alex barely spoke at dinner. He didn't ask for seconds or talk about Halloween candy trades like usual. He just kept his hand in his pocket, like he was holding something. I knew what it was. The candy. I had checked his bag earlier, and there was only one piece of that black-wrapped candy left. The others were gone. I asked him if he had eaten them, and he only smiled. I told Mom, but she brushed it off. Probably just a sugar crash. She said, let him sleep it off. But he didn't look tired. He looked alert, like he was listening to something none of us could hear. That night, I woke up to the sound of whispering, faint, like the wind through the vent. I crept to Alex's room. The door was cracked open, and I could see him sitting up in bed, facing the window. The curtains swayed, though the window was closed. Alex, I whispered. He didn't move. His hand lifted slowly, placing the last piece of candy on his tongue. I rushed forward, shouting, no. Any wanting to rever. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the light from his lamp flickered once, and Alex was gone. Just gone. I screamed. My parents came running, but by the time they burst in, the room was empty. Only his little pirate mask lay on the rug beside the bed. I don't remember much after that. The police came. They searched the house, in the yard, the storm drains. Nothing. I told them about the candy, about Mr. Luke's house, but they said the property was abandoned. No one named Luke had lived there in years. But I knew what I saw. The next morning, while Mom cried on the phone, I walked back to the end of the street. The porch light was off now. The bowl was gone, but the door was cracked open just enough for me to slip inside. The smell hit me first. Sweet and stale, like syrup that had sat too long. The living room was empty, except for a rocking chair moving gently, creaking without rhythm. On the wall were faded crayon drawings of children holding hands, but one by one their faces had been scribbled out. And on the floor, arranged in a perfect circle, were candy wrappers. Black, dozens of them. Empty. Something told me to look closer. In the middle of that circle sat a glass jar filled with the same candy, sealed tight, a label tied with a piece of twine. I bent down and read the words scrawled in red ink. Take back what was taken, but only at the same place. I didn't understand. Not fully, but I took one candy from the jar, clutching it so hard the foil dug into my palm. I ran all the way home. When I stepped into Alex's room, the air felt heavier. I placed the candy on the floor exactly where he had been standing the night before. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air in the room shifted. The candy unwrapped itself. The foil curled back like a flower opening in slow motion. I stepped away as a shape began to shimmer above it. Faint at first, like mist, then solid. Alex. He was on the floor, curled up, breathing shallow but real. "Alex." I ran to him, shaking his shoulders. He blinked awake, confused. "June, why is it so dark?" AP tax. I didn't get the chance to answer, because from behind the couch, something moved. A sound like heavy cloth dragging across wood. Then a hand, dark and cracked, reached up and grabbed my wrist. I screamed. Its skin was cold and dry, like paper. I could feel the shape of its fingers pressing into my veins. I turned and saw him, or what was left of him. A tall figure stepped out of the shadows. His face was melted smooth except for a mouth, stretched wide and wet, opening far too much. He smelled like sugar that had burned. I froze. He reached for Alex. The room pulsed, every light flickering as the air bent inward. I don't think I thought at all. I just did it. I snatched the candy from the floor and threw it into the fireplace. The flame caught fast, roaring up like it was alive. The figure stopped. That awful mouth opened again, but no sound came out. Then his body cracked like dry candy shell and scattered into smoke. And just like that, he was gone. Alex cried for a long time. Mom said it was trauma, that his mind blocked out what happened. I didn't tell her the truth. I couldn't. We never found out who Mr. Luke really was. The house at the end of the street got boarded up again, and no one talked about it. But every Halloween since then, when the sun goes down, there's always one piece of black-wrapped candy sitting on our front porch. I never touch it. But sometimes, late at night, I hear a faint crinkle of foil from Alex's room. Before we step into the next story, if you're still here, still listening, with the lights low, maybe drop a comment. Just tell me where you're listening from. It helps more than you know. All right, let's keep going. My first Halloween in Harveston was supposed to be simple. Just a quiet walk through a quiet neighborhood, grabbing a few pieces of candy so I wouldn't look like a total outsider. We had moved here 2 weeks earlier, and I barely knew anyone outside of the school bus route. Mom said it would be good for me to get out. I didn't argue. She offered to come with me, but that would have been worse. So I threw on my old black hoodie and the cat mask I had worn 2 years in a row. It still fit, and it still smelled like plastic and glue from the dollar store shelf. I stuffed a pillowcase in my backpack for candy and walked out just before sunset. Harveston looked like a postcard version of Halloween. Every yard had pumpkins or lights or some kind of scarecrow. The sky was pink and orange behind rows of perfectly spaced trees, and kids in little clusters darted between porches, parents watching from a safe distance. It should have felt comforting. But I remember this one moment early on. I was maybe 6 houses in, when a little girl dressed like a bumblebee looked up at me and said, "She already came by." Then she pointed across the street. I followed her hand and saw someone standing still on the corner. They were wearing a black hoodie, a cat mask, just like mine. I paused, confused. The figure didn't move. I couldn't make out any details from where I was, but they were the same height as me, the same build. I was about to cross the street when someone opened the door behind me and said, "Happy Halloween." This saddened in place. When I turned back, the figure was gone. I kept walking, told myself it was just someone else in a similar costume. That happens. People buy the same stuff all the time. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever that was, they hadn't been walking house to house like the other kids. They had just been standing there, watching. It kept happening. At one house, a man handing out candy said, "Back again. You changed your mask." I told him it was my first time there. He frowned, laughed a little, then said, "Must have been your twin." That one of our Jack did. At another door, a woman said, "You dropped this earlier," and handed me a red sucker I had never seen before. By the time I reached the end of Ash Grove Lane, the sky was almost fully dark. I hadn't seen the other cat mask figure again. Not clearly. just shapes at the edge of yards. A silhouette in the reflection of a window. Once, I thought I saw someone crouching behind a bush. But when I turned, it was empty. I felt off. Not scared yet, but unsettled. Like the air around me didn't quite match what I was seeing. I thought maybe I was just tired or overthinking it. So I sat on the curb for a minute to adjust my mask and pull out some candy. That's when I noticed my reflection in the side mirror of a parked car. I tilted my head left. The reflection went right. I froze. Did it again? Slower this time. Same result. I lifted my hand. The reflection didn't move at all. I stood up and backed away from the car. Heart racing. Told myself it was just a trick of the glass or a weird angle. But deep down, I knew what I saw. That wasn't a mirror. Not really. It was something pretending to be one. I decided to head home. My hands were shaking, and my legs didn't feel right. On the walk back, I passed by more kids, more decorations, more lights. Everything felt staged, like it had all been set up before I got there, and someone was watching how I'd react to it. When I reached my street, I saw the porch light on, which didn't make sense. Mom wasn't supposed to be home for another hour. I stopped at the edge of the driveway. The curtain in the living room was open just enough to see inside. And there, sitting on the couch with her feet tucked under her, was me. Same hoodie, same mask, sitting across from my mom, talking like nothing was wrong. I took one step forward. She turned her head. Slowly, the mask faced the window. And I swear, I felt something behind me breathe. I did not scream. I wanted to, but the sound caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. I backed away from the window until my foot hit the curb. Inside, the version of me tilted her head like she heard it. My mom laughed at something she said. That laugh made it worse. I started walking, not sure where to go. Every house on the street looked the same in the dark. Every porch light hummed. I went past one driveway, then another, until I found myself back on the main road again. Cars moved by slow, their headlights flashing over the mask in my hand. When I tried to talk to someone, they looked at me like they didn't know me. A woman asked if I was lost. A boy from my school said, "You just left my house," before running off. The more people I met, the less real I felt. Like I was the echo, not the voice. So I walked until I found the empty lot at the edge of the neighborhood. There was a broken shed there, old enough that vines had grown through its door. I slipped inside because it was the only place that didn't have lights. My hands were shaking. My breath made little clouds in the cold air. The shed smelled like dust and rain. There was a tall mirror leaning against the far wall, the kind with a gold frame that had peeled to copper. I didn't remember it being there when I peeked in earlier that week, but I did remember seeing the same kind of mirror in our living room behind the couch. When I looked into it, I saw her. She was standing inside the glass. Not a reflection, but a person waiting behind it. The cat mask hung around her neck, and her face was mine. She smiled, though I didn't. The glass fogged between us as she whispered something I couldn't hear. I felt like the air around me had been sucked away. My heart pounded so loud it hurt. She raised her hand to the glass, and without thinking, I raised mine too. Our fingers met, cold against cold. Then she moved first. The reflection pressed forward. Harder. I stumbled back. The mirror shook once, and then it starts. The surface ripples like water. She leans halfway out, her eyes locked on mine. I grab the broken handle of a garden rake nearby and swing. The mirror shatters, glass spraying around me in a burst of white light. When I open my eyes, I am standing in front of my house again. The porch light flickers. My hand is bleeding where I still clutch a jagged piece of glass. Through the window, the other me is still there. Mom is beside her, reading something on her phone, smiling. I can't just watch. I need her to see which one is real. I hold up the mirror shard. It catches the porch light, throwing a thin beam through the window. In the reflection of that glass, I see my mom sitting alone. The couch beside her is empty. Something moves behind me. Quick, soft. She steps out of the dark, face blank, mask gone, only skin where eyes should be. I raise the shard like a weapon. She reaches for me, fingers trembling. Her voice sounds like mine but smaller. You were never supposed to look. Distracted night. I push the shard between us. It hits her chest. The moment it touches, her body ripples, breaks into streaks of light, and pulls inward like smoke through a crack. I fall backward onto the grass. When I open my eyes, it is quiet again. The porch light stays steady. Inside, Mom looks up suddenly, like waking from a dream. She sees me through the window and waves. I walk inside. She asks why I'm out of breath. I just tell her the costume scared a few kids and we laughed about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made me sit up. Around midnight, I looked toward my closet mirror. A faint outline shimmered there, almost invisible. A reflection that lagged half a second behind. I told myself it was only the light, only my imagination. But even now, sometimes when I pass that mirror, I see a small crack running down the glass. And if I look long enough, I can swear someone on the other side is still smiling back. It was one of those Halloween nights where the fog doesn't burn off. It just hangs there, like it forgot how to move. The streetlights made it worse, turning every yard into a stage where shadows drifted too slow and too soft. I remember the way the air smelled, like cold candy and wet leaves, and the sound of our sneakers on damp pavement. It was me, Marcus, and Luis. We had already hit every house that gave out good stuff, and were just looking for ways to stretch the night. You know the kind of mood I mean. Not quite bored, not quite ready to go home. So I said we should play knock and run. It was dumb. Yeah, but we were 12. Knock on a door. Sprint into the fog before anyone could yell. Marcus rolled his eyes but followed. Luis was nervous about it. Of course. He always was. We picked a house at the edge of Elm Court. It was dark, shutters drawn, and the lawn was patchy and full of old toys half buried in the dirt. Nobody had lived there for years, but someone had left out a rusted lawn chair and a plastic skeleton missing one arm. It was perfect. I ran up and knocked once, then twice, then we all bolted. Marcus dove behind a bush across the street. Luis tripped over the curb but got back up, laughing and clutching his bag of candy. I dropped behind an old compost bin in the yard next door and waited, heart thudding, eyes scanning the porch for any sign of movement. That's when I saw it. A glint of red in the bushes beside the porch. Like a reflection, I reached in and pulled out a flashlight. Small, is metal, scratched up. The lens was tinted, a deep red, like the kind they use on stage lights or in photo labs. Hey, I called out to the others. Check this out. This way. We regrouped under a tree and took turns clicking it on. The beam wasn't very bright, but it had this weird, sharp color. Everything it hit turned blood dark like shining light through soda. It felt heavy in my hand. Not physically, just heavy. Luis shined it at the ground and froze. There's footprints, he said. Look, think you have a safe. Sure enough, where the beam hit the sidewalk, there were tiny shoe prints. Barely there, like a child had run through dust and left just the hint of a path. But when we turned off the flashlight, the prints vanished. Marcus tested it on a wall. The red light showed a handprint, high up, fingers long and spread wide. It looked smeared, like it had dragged down the bricks. No mark under regular light, only red. Luis said we should leave it alone. I said, what if it's like a haunted thing? You know, a cursed object. And pertain, not helping, Marcus muttered. We should have thrown it back. I know that now. But instead, We kept going. We walked another block, just messing around, shining the red light at trees, at cars, at porches. We didn't find anything for a while. Then Louise gasped. Across the street, on someone's lawn, stood a figure. It was short, still, facing us. We couldn't see it with our own eyes, but when we turned the red light toward it, the shape came into view like smoke-catching form. It looked like a kid, not dressed for Halloween, just standing there, arms at its sides, head tilted. The face was wrong, blurred, or maybe moving too fast to stay still. Marcus cursed under his breath. I laughed. I don't know why. Nervous, probably. Nice costume, I said out loud. But the thing didn't move. Not until we turned the flashlight off. Then it vanished. We stood there for a while, not saying much. The fog felt thicker now, like it had noticed us. Let's go back, Luis whispered. Let's just go. Isn't ever back today. The give side in the 7 dotting, the what it is bactive. But I couldn't help it. I turned the light on one more time and swept it around in a slow arc. And that's when I saw it. Another shape, crouched behind the mailbox not 5 feet away. Its face inches from the ground, eyes fixed right on me. I dropped the flashlight. My fingers just let go, like my body wanted no part of what I had seen. The beam hit the sidewalk and rolled, spinning shadows across our feet. When it stopped, the red light pointed toward the empty mailbox. Only it wasn't empty anymore. There was a shape crawling away. Not fast, just steady. Limbs too long, too jointed, like they bent where they shouldn't. Luis was crying now. Marcus reached down, grabbed the flashlight, and turned it off. Darkness rushed back in. We didn't speak. We just ran, not toward home, not toward the houses with real lights, but into the narrow cut between backyards behind the block. There was a shortcut there, a place where the fences broke open to an old lot where a playground used to be. I don't know why we went that way. Maybe we thought it was safer. It wasn't. The moment we stepped onto the cracked blacktop, everything felt wrong, like the air had sunk lower, pressing into our shoulders. There were no houses nearby, just silence and the creaking of old swing chains that shouldn't have been moving. Luis tripped and fell to his knees. I reached for him, but he was shaking his head. They're following, he whispered. They're right behind. Besass. Marcus clicked the flashlight back on. At first, nothing. Just the red circle of light on the edge of the broken slide. Then we saw them. Figures. Lots of them. Small and gray, with faces you couldn't focus on. They stood at the edge of the lot, lining the fence. They did not breathe. They did not move. But every time Marcus swung the light away and then back, they were closer. Danny, Marcus said, tell me what to do. Is day. I had no idea. My mouth wouldn't work. I felt the ground tilt. Something was pulling at us. Not with hands, but with presence, like gravity made of cold. Luis screamed. We turned and saw him being dragged. Not lifted, just pulled. A hand around his ankle, fingers tight. His nails scraped the pavement as he tried to hold on. Marcus drops the flashlight. The beam jerks wildly as he dives for Luis. I grab Luis's other arm. We pull. We pull hard. The red beam spins, landing squarely on the hand that's wrapped around Luis's leg. And that is when it stops moving. I feel it happen in real time. The hand stiffens. The skin cracks. The fingers let go. We yank Luis free and fall back onto the ground, panting. But then the light catches something else. They are all around us now, standing in a wide circle, unmoving, but closer than before. The red beam shows one just inches from my face. I can see that its eyes are hollow, not empty, but deep like doorways. Marcus picks up the flashlight. His hand is bleeding. He flicks the beam wide, aiming it at every face, every form. Every shadow. The figures do not like that. They twitch. They shimmer. They flicker in and out of shape. The air begins to buzz like wires humming inside a wall. I feel heat rising from the flashlight even though the air is cold. I yell, "Throw it." Things altane. Marcus hurls the flashlight forward into the crowd. The beam flashes across the pavement and lands between two of the creatures. The red light explodes outward like a flare, and the circle shatters. Everything moves at once. We run, not thinking, not breathing, just running. Out of the lot, down the back path, back into the part of the neighborhood that still makes sense, where porch lights are warm and yellow and people talk and laugh. We don't stop until we're sitting on Marcus's front steps. Shaking, Luis barely spoke the rest of the night. His voice was thin, like something had been left behind. Marcus kept staring at the flashlight in his hands. It was off, but we knew it was not empty. I told them we had to get rid of it, but Marcus didn't. He wrapped it in a towel and stuffed it in an old box in his basement. Said he would throw it away later. Weeks passed. We never went near Elm Court again. And then one night, Marcus called me. His voice was quiet. "Danny," he said. I checked the box. The flashlight is on. And record to stand. We didn't even plan to stay that long. My mom said we could check out the Halloween block party for an hour. Maybe 90 minutes if Tucker's parents showed up. She handed me a hoodie and reminded me to stick with the crowd, not to eat anything open, and to avoid the edge of the cul-de-sac where the creek started. I said okay, but I already knew we were going to break at least 2 of those rules. Tucker was already waiting for me near the inflatable archway the neighbors put up every year. He had fake vampire fangs stuck halfway out of his mouth and a plastic pitchfork over his shoulder. We were both 12, but he looked older in costume, confident, like the party was his. The block was packed. Every other driveway had tables full of candy or crafts. Some parents played spooky music through Bluetooth speakers. Others handed out cookies wrapped in plastic. You could smell cinnamon and burnt sugar in the air. Fog machines puffed around skeletons and glow-in-the-dark spider webs. It felt safe, which is why I didn't notice anything strange at first. We moved from table to table, piling candy into paper sacks. Tucker snagged a caramel apple from someone's grill station and ate the whole thing in 3 bites. I stuck to packaged stuff. That was our rhythm. Him diving in, me holding back. Always had been. Then we saw the cider. It was a folding table with no decorations. Just a cooler and a sign written in red Sharpie, "Homemade apple cider." No charge. Nobody was standing behind it. Just 2 styrofoam cups on top, one already half full. Tucker went for it immediately. "Hey, score," he said, grabbing the ladle. I stepped up beside him, hesitating. "Wait, should we?" "Wait." He didn't answer. He had already downed the cup and was pouring another. I leaned closer. The smell hit me first. Not bad. Exactly. Kind of sweet and spicy, but stronger than it should have been. There was a slight film on the surface, like melted wax or soup fat that hadn't cooled right. Something about it made the back of my throat tighten. "It's really good," Tucker said. "Tastes weird though. Like something from a memory." "Is it Clary?" I stared at him. "That's not a normal thing to say. We have not dead." He laughed, but not like he meant it. It was short, automatic. Then he looked over his shoulder toward the alley next to the Hanley's house and said, "I think I remember this street differently. And grade brops in after 9s. What? This feel to a gender." He didn't explain, just turned and walked toward the alley. I followed. The party sounds faded fast. No one seemed to notice we had wandered off. He stopped at the brick wall behind the last house on the block. It was covered in vines and old chalk drawings from the neighborhood kids. Tucker reached out and pressed his hand to it. "I think they changed something," he said quietly. "It's not the same this year." "This said chains." I looked at his fingers. They were trembling, not from cold, from something else. Then someone behind me said, "He's just like the others." He said thingfication. I turned. A woman was standing in the shadow of the fence gate. She wore a long gray coat and had her hands folded in front of her, like she was waiting for a train. "Excuse me," I asked. She didn't answer, just smiled and disappeared back around the corner. I ran after her, but by the time I reached the sidewalk, and she was gone, I called Tucker's name, louder this time. He didn't respond. I went back to the wall. He was gone too. Just gone. I searched the alley until my voice started cracking. Tucker was nowhere. No footsteps. No rustle of leaves. Not even a stupid joke from behind a bush. Just that brick wall and the half-faded chalk marks. I ran back to the party. Everything was normal. Music still played. Kids still screamed and laughed and darted around like the world had no corners. But I could feel the gap. The space where Tucker should have been. I told two parents I had lost my friend. One of them smiled too easily and said, "You mean the tall one? You came here alone." "Sweetie." The other asked if I was feeling okay. Like maybe I had eaten too much sugar. I wanted to grab their shirts and scream. Instead, I found a house with one of those doorbell cameras. I asked the guy if I could check the footage from 10 minutes ago. He pulled it up on his phone without asking why. I watched myself walk past the house. Alone. No Tucker. No one beside me. I turned away from the screen before it ended. My stomach felt hollow, like I had swallowed air and couldn't push it back out. I needed answers, and I knew where to go. Back to the cider table. I didn't expect it to still be there, but it was. Same sign, same cooler. One cup on the table, clean and dry. I didn't drink it, but I took it, and I followed the smell. It was fainter now, but still there, like bruised apples left too long on the counter. I let it guide me down the far end of the cul-de-sac, past the bounce house and the snack table, to a little side yard between two houses I had never paid attention to before. There was a bench near the fence, and on it Tucker, sitting like nothing had happened. He smiled when he saw me. "Dude, where did you go?" he said. My legs didn't move. I just stared at him. His clothes were the same. His voice was right. But something in the way he tilted his head, just a bit too slow, made my neck itch. "You all right?" he asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Is self." I stepped forward. "What was the flavor of that soda you spilled on my math homework last week?" "Is an ever, who sting dot." He laughed. "What? If there was no, just tell me." "Intends to minds." He hesitated. "Grape. And we can do in this claimed botter, and their cons for cyan, with not to a body use." It was orange. I never forgot because it stained the entire page and smelled like melted Skittles. I backed away. His smile stayed fixed, but his eyes didn't follow me. They stayed looking somewhere just over my shoulder, like someone else was feeding him a cue card. "I think it's better now," he said softly. "I don't need to remember things. They're gonna remember for me. Thanks for watching." Then he stood and turned and walked toward the back fence. His hand brushed the side of the house as he passed, fingers twitching like they were scanning something. Behind him, I saw movement. Other kids, all spaced out, walking slowly in the same direction. Same twitching fingers, same vacant smiles. I ran, but not far, just to the cider table. It was still alone, still quiet. The cup I had taken was still in my hand. I filled it halfway and watched the surface settle. Then I dumped it, right onto the pavement. The sound it made was wrong. More like wet paper tearing than a liquid splash. Something behind me exhaled. I turned and saw Tucker fall to his knees. He didn't cry out, didn't speak. His body folded in on itself. Not like collapsing, more like pouring, like he had never been solid at all. The other kids stopped walking. Each one froze for a second, then blinked for the first time, and turned the other way. I don't remember much after that. Someone called my mom. She picked me up. I told her Tucker went home early. She didn't ask questions. He didn't show up to school the next day, or the day after. When I checked our yearbook from last semester, his photo was missing. Not blank. Missing. Like the space had been used for something else entirely. And on Halloween the next year, I saw it again. Same block party. Same energy. And a new cider table. This time with a metal thermos and a sign that just said, "Try me." I didn't. But someone did. And when I passed the table an hour later, there was only one cup left. Still full. Still warm. That one hit a little different. If these stories mean something to you, leave a like, subscribe, or share this video with someone who'd stay up to hear it too. And if you've got a true horror story of your own, my email's in the description. Now, story 6. Every Halloween, our neighborhood felt a little too quiet after dark. The houses were spaced out, tucked into the edges of silver pines like the forest was swallowing them one by one. The kids still came out, and the lights still glowed behind jack-o'-lanterns. But once you passed the community center, everything stretched into weird silence. That was where the real kids went. The ones who didn't just want candy. The ones who wanted stories. That year, it was me, Riley, and Zach. We were in middle school, which meant we were old enough to be out without parents and dumb enough to try and prove it. Zach had the idea to map our own trick-or-treat path, a sort of treasure trail, through the neighborhood. He brought out a stack of paper and a highlighter and started sketching by flashlight on the curb. Riley and I just went along with it. Then I found the other map. It was crumpled in the bottom of my candy bag, tucked between a pack of Smarties and a broken plastic spider ring. At first, I thought it was one of those Halloween scavenger hunt flyers people handed out, but this one was hand-drawn and old. The paper had gone soft at the edges. Ink bled into the folds. And right there in the center of it was our neighborhood, but not exactly as we knew it. There was a thick black oval drawn near the eastern woods. Inside, scrawled in tiny, shaky letters, it said, "No signal. Do not cross." I should have folded it up and thrown it in the trash, but Zach saw it over my shoulder and grinned. "That's where we're going," he said. "Dead zone. That's in another round." I looked at Riley. He didn't like it. I could tell. He pretended to be annoyed, but his eyes kept flicking back to the map. That was the thing about Riley. He never wanted to be the one to say no. We left the glow of the street lamps and walked past the last lit porch. The sound of music and laughing kids faded fast. The sidewalk turned to gravel, then faded altogether. A cold dampness crept in. You could smell the pine sap. It clung to your clothes. According to the map, the dead zone started just past the old greenhouse, a glass building that had been boarded up for years. The wood around it was soft with mold. Zach knocked once on the frame and chuckled. No ghosts. Yet. They good Notman. It was right after that when Riley's phone lost signal. 1 second he had 3 bars and a group chat open. The next, his screen flashed red and said, "Searching." GPS froze. Then his flashlight app shut down. We all stopped walking. "Eli," he said, "your map said this was where the line starts." "Right. Was you active prize?" I checked. We were dead center in the black oval. Zach pulled out his own phone. "No service." "Mine too." "I don't like this," Riley said. "Let's go back." "You're not 10-9. But Zach just kept walking. "Come on. You want a story to tell or not?" "Ag self." We followed. The ground dipped into a shallow gully filled with dead leaves and beer cans. Old fire pits. Broken fence posts. There were no houses here. Just outlines of where things used to be. The kind of place that always feels like it's waiting for something to return. That was when we saw it. A house, still standing, just barely. behind a mess of overgrowth and fallen branches. None of us had ever seen it before. It wasn't on Google Maps. It wasn't on my mom's running trail. But here it was, like it had been dropped there and forgotten. Windows shattered, roof sagging, door half-hinged and crooked like a yawn. Zach walked up and knocked it, because of course he did. We waited. Nothing. Then he stepped inside. Riley looked at me, silently begging me not to say what I was about to say. Let's just see what's in the front room, I told him. Then we're out. A Jenner when all sing sags. We stepped through the doorway, and the world fell silent. Not just quiet, silent. No wind, no creaking, not even the sound of our own footsteps. I opened my mouth to speak. No sound came out. That's when Zach turned to us, slowly, with his mouth still smiling. But his eyes looked like they had forgotten how to move. We backed out of the doorway, like it might break if we moved too fast. The sound didn't come back. My own breathing felt trapped in my chest, like the air refused to carry it. Zach stood just inside the living room, still smiling. Riley nudged me, his face pale. He's not blinking, he mouthed. His lips moved, but I heard nothing, not a whisper. I took a step toward Zach. He didn't react, just turned slowly, mechanically, and walked toward the far side of the house, like something had called him. We followed, even though we didn't want to. I think we were afraid to be alone. The hallway narrowed, pressing in on both sides. When I reached out, the wallpaper felt damp, like it had just been peeled off ice. There was a back door. We slipped through it and stumbled into a wide clearing. The silence shattered, but not all at once. Sound came back in pieces. The wind in the trees, the rustle of leaves, our footsteps. And then, nothing again. Like something decided it was done letting us hear. Riley grabbed my arm and pointed. The map, he said. His voice was faint, like it had to climb out of a well. I pulled it out. The dead zone was gone. In its place, the map now read, integrated. And there, near the bottom corner, in tiny letters, Observer Station, 13, active. We looked up. Zach was standing near a rusted pole in the ground. It might have been part of a playground once, or a radio tower. He placed his hand on it like he had always known it would be there. What is he doing? I asked, but I already knew. He was taking his place. I scanned the map again. The lines were changing in real time. Streets we had crossed were now darker, marked with small X's. One red line appeared across the bottom. A path marked, 1 exit, 3 minutes active. Riley stared at me. We have to go. You say this is Tay. We ran. Not toward the clearing. Not toward Zach. Toward the path. The trees thinned. The light grew brighter. But every few steps, Riley glanced behind. I couldn't. The map buzzed faintly in my hand. I don't know how, but it did. We reached a point where the air felt warm again, where I could hear my own feet. Then the path split. One side still marked in red, one side blank. We stopped. The red line pulsed. I think only one of us can go, Riley said. That's what it means. And that's not. No, I told him. We'll figure it out. Hamster pride dying. But Riley stepped back, pressed the map into my chest. You're better at remembering, he said. That matters. And doubts be gone. I opened my mouth to argue. But he was already turning. And then, I was running. I followed the red line. Trees whipped past. The air thickened again, just for a second, and then cleared like fog burning off glass. And suddenly, I was back. The sidewalk, porch lights, the sound of kids laughing. It was all there again. Except Riley was not. I told no one. Not right away. At school, Zach was marked absent for a week. Then his name was no longer on the attendance sheet. When I asked about Riley, our teacher said, "Who?" And Wace, no one remembered. But 2 weeks later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was the map. It had changed again. The lines were thicker now. The dead zone was back. Bigger. And written at the bottom, in handwriting I recognized, were 5 words. "We remember where you stood." I never liked Halloween as much as my brother did. I think it was the chaos that bothered me. Too many costumes. Too much sugar. Too many kids screaming about who got what. But Alex, he loved it. He was 6 that year, and to him the world still looked like something you could win with a smile and a pillowcase full of candy. I was 11 and had been assigned to take him around the neighborhood while Mom and Dad helped with the community potluck. Not that I minded. Really, Alex trusted me more than he trusted anyone else. He had a habit of holding the back of my hoodie when he got nervous, like I was the anchor that kept him from floating off. We went up and down both sides of Willow Bend Street. He was dressed as a pumpkin, round, orange, squeaky with every step. I wore jeans and a gray sweatshirt and pretended I wasn't technically trick-or-treating. But I kept a bag in my hand just in case someone offered chocolate. Around the 4th or 5th house, I started noticing something weird. I counted the candy in Alex's bag out of boredom while we walked between porches. 7 pieces. Not strange in itself. But then he dropped one. I picked it up, put it back, and counted again. Still 7. "Don't eat any yet," I said. "We're almost home. Thanks for watching with an eye video." They were present and no jest. He nodded, eyes scanning the next porch. His bag jiggled in his grip. I counted again while we waited for a door to open. 7. It happened again at the next house. He got 3 new pieces, 2 mini candy bars and a lollipop. But when I checked, there were still just 7. "Alex," I said, squatting down to his level, "did you give any away?" "Randa too." He shook his head. "Serious?" "Nope. Considers people die." "Did you eat one?" "Thanks to BS." "Nope." "Yes, makes us sleep." I looked inside the bag. 7. Different kinds, different wrappers, but always 7. Back at the house, I told myself it was just bad counting. Tired eyes. Too much walking. I laid out all the candy on the table and grouped it into piles. 7 pieces. So I added one. A piece from my own stash. I tucked it at the bottom of the pile. Came back 5 minutes later. Still 7. The one I added was gone, like it had never been there. I tried it again. Different wrapper. Same result. That was when I really started to feel it. Like something was watching not me, but the bag. Later that night, I was helping Alex into pajamas when I checked his hoodie pocket. 1 candy. I checked his nightstand. 2 more. I lined them up and waited. After brushing his teeth, Alex came back into the room, glanced at the candies, and said, "That's too many." "Bake Hale." I didn't answer. Just watched him put 2 back into the bag like he had done it 100 times before. "Why 7? I asked. He paused like he had to think about it. "That's how many I always get," he said. "That's how many I need." It made day. I didn't sleep well that night. The next day, I told one of the older neighbors, Mr. Barrett, what I had noticed, half as a joke, half not. He was sitting on his porch in a rocking chair, coat draped over his shoulders like he had lived there too long to care about the weather. When I told him, he didn't laugh. Instead, he leaned forward and said, "Don't let him eat the 7th. HS. I blinked. "What?" "Ander. Not this year," he added. "Too many try to finish the set." This was that. I kept the bag away from him that night, tucked it on top of the fridge, behind the cereal boxes. I figured if he couldn't reach it, he couldn't eat the 7th. and maybe whatever was watching would get bored. But I didn't think about the ones in his pockets. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the kitchen. I stayed in bed at first, thinking it was Mom or Dad, but something about the shuffle felt wrong. Soft, unhurried. I crept out of my room and peeked down the hallway. Alex sat on the kitchen floor, legs crossed, wrapper in one hand. He had peeled the candy halfway. Not a brand I recognized. The foil was a dull gold. No markings. The kind of wrapper that looked too clean to be real. I moved before I could talk myself out of it. Alex, stop. It's not Doc. Too late. He popped the candy into his mouth and swallowed. Just like that. I froze. His eyes met mine. And I swear, just for a second, he didn't recognize me. Then he smiled. But it wasn't his smile. Not the usual toothy, gummy grin. This one was slow, closed-lipped, like someone else trying to remember how it felt to look happy. I saved it, he said. Last one always tastes better. And I tent. I took a step back. The kitchen felt colder now. The light from the fridge cast long shadows, and Alex's shadow stretched too far across the floor. It touched my toes. Go back to bed, he said. I did. I don't know why. My legs just turned and carried me back down the hallway like I was being pushed. I didn't sleep. I sat up with my back against the wall, listening for more movement. There wasn't any. The next morning, he acted normal. Too normal. He used words like perhaps and consequently. He stacked his toast before eating it. He asked if I knew what time the mail came. Alex did not know what a mail schedule was. At breakfast, he looked at me and said, "You did the right thing trying to stop it." It is not it. I dropped my spoon. Mom and Dad didn't notice. They just smiled, glad we were getting along. I ran back to Mr. Barrett's porch, but the chair was empty. Dust on the seat. Porch light off. I knocked. No answer. Someone across the street called out. He passed last spring. None. Is fine why. I didn't answer. I walked home and checked Alex's hoodie again. 7 pieces, neatly lined up in his pocket. Not the same types as before. New ones. Unlabeled. That's when I realized it wasn't just a trick. It was a rule. Something had counted. Something had claimed. I burned all the candy in the backyard grill that afternoon. Even mine. I dumped water over the ashes and scrubbed the grate. Alex watched through the window. When I came back in, he asked if I thought fire could undo memory. I didn't answer. That night, I tried one last thing. While Alex was drawing in the living room, I placed 7 empty wrappers in a row on the floor. All different colors. All laid out like a trap. He looked up from his paper, paused, then said, "That's not how the count works." He's sprang. "What is the count?" I asked. He tilted his head. "The amount you leave untouched, not the ones you eat." Is not. I felt something shift behind my eyes, like I was seeing him through water, so I did the only thing I could think of. I took the wrappers, crushed them in my hand, and whispered, "Then this isn't yours anymore." He. The room dimmed. Not like the lights went out. More like they were swallowed. Alex blinked once, slowly, and slumped to the floor. He woke up a minute later, eyes clear, confused. He asked why I was crying. I didn't tell him, but every Halloween since, I checked the hallway before bed. Every year, on the night of the 31st, a small cloth pouch appears outside his door. No markings. No name. 7 pieces inside. I never let him open it. The Halloween after I turned 13 was the first time I went out alone. My grandma let me go as long as I promised to stay within the subdivision and be back before 10. It was our first fall in Greenwood, a brand new neighborhood that smelled like cut drywall and wet concrete. Most of the houses still had realtors' signs out front, and not everyone had moved in yet. I didn't have a costume, just a black hoodie and a pillowcase. The other kids ran past me in bunches, squealing about who had full-size bars and which house had a fog machine. I stayed off to the side and took my time. I didn't know anyone well enough to join their group, and I didn't want to look like I cared too much. The strangest house was at the end of the farthest cul-de-sac. It sat just past a row of half-built homes, where the grass hadn't fully grown in yet. The porch light was on, but the house itself looked off, too shiny. The siding had a weird gloss to it, and the windows reflected light like old plastic. Even the tree in the yard looked wrong. Symmetrical in a way, real trees never are. But the front steps were lit. A red plastic bucket sat near the door. So I figured, why not? The path up to it felt soft, like walking on gym mat flooring. My shoes didn't echo. My breath did. I reached the bucket and saw a sign propped behind it in clear handwriting. Choose one. Say thank you. Smile. He said no. Dating the Witho. Inside the bucket, there were exactly 3 candies. Not 3 types. 3 total. One was a flat disc wrapped in red foil. One was a small square in paper that looked waxed. The last looked like a piece of chalk dipped in caramel. I picked the red foil. As soon as I dropped it into my pillowcase, the door creaked open behind me. A woman stood there, late 30s maybe. Her hair was pulled tight and shiny, face too smooth. No wrinkles, no lines, just eyes, wide and watching. Thank you, I said, because the sign told me to. She smiled, but not at me, at the wall, just past my shoulder. Then she shut the door. I backed off the porch and looked up at the windows again. There were no curtains, just the same pale yellow light spilling out. Nothing moved behind it. I kept walking, but something about that house clung to me. I tried to join another group of kids and pretend like everything was normal, but I looked back after every other stop. And each time, the house was still there. Same light, same windows, same wrong. I told myself I was just being weird. That new construction always looked fake until the yard filled in and people added flags or wind chimes. But then I saw the second one. Across the field behind the unfinished houses, another house with the same plastic sheen, same yellow glow in the windows, same porch bucket, identical. I stood there for a long time, just watching, and then someone stepped onto the porch. A kid in a costume, shorter than me, moving too slow. I couldn't see their face, but when they turned to look back at me, just a glance, I felt it, like looking into a mirror that hadn't decided what to reflect yet. I couldn't move for a while. The other kids kept laughing in the distance, their voices bouncing off the empty lots. But the sound didn't reach the end of the cul-de-sac. It stopped short, like the air around that house swallowed everything before it got close. I finally turned away. I told myself I had imagined the second house, that the fog or the lights had played a trick on me. But the farther I walked, the quieter everything became. Even the crickets stopped. When I checked my phone for the time, the screen stayed black. I looked back once more. The 2 houses glowed at opposite ends of the field now, identical down to the porch light flicker. Their reflections shimmered faintly on the damp asphalt as if the ground itself had turned glossy. Then a third light appeared between them. That was when I ran. Not fast, just steady, trying to make it back to where the normal houses began. But every turn led me to another street that looked the same. Same spacing, same new mailboxes, same plastic siding gleaming under the yellow lamps. Each time I crossed, I expected to see the main road. Each time I didn't. I passed one yard that had fake tombstones. I leaned on the fence to breathe and realized the grass under my hand felt like carpet. Perfectly smooth. No dirt, no grit, just plastic blades that bent the wrong way. Then I saw movement inside the nearest house. A shape at the window. I stepped closer. It was me, standing inside. The same hoodie, the same posture, the same small tilt of the head I make when I'm thinking. My reflection blinked, then smiled. I stumbled back. My pulse went wild. I turned around. And there, across the street, another version of the same house waited with its door cracked open, spilling light onto the sidewalk. I should have run. Instead, I went inside. The floor flexed under my shoes like hollow plastic. The air smelled faintly of glue. Everything was perfect and wrong at once. Picture frames with printed families. Food that looked sculpted. Furniture without seams. A low hum filled the rooms, rhythmic and steady, like something breathing behind the walls. On the coffee table was a notebook. I flipped it open. Each page listed a date and a name. All the names were children. Next to each name was a single word, joined. My name was at the bottom. I backed away, nearly tripping over the rug. The hum rose higher, turning into vibration. The walls pulsed once. Then the lights began to stutter. I ran to the front door, but when I opened it, I wasn't outside. I was in another hallway. Same floor, same walls, same faint smell of heat and plastic. The hum followed me, echoing from room to room. I turned in circles, looking for a window that showed the night. Anything real. All I saw was light. And then I saw them. The children, lined up down the hall, each one with a fixed smile, faces smooth like molded wax. Their eyes caught the light but didn't reflect it back. One of them lifted a hand and pointed toward the far end of the hall. A door waited there, half open. I ran through it. The air outside hit me so hard I almost fell. Cold, real, full of sound again. I kept running until I reached the real neighborhood, the one with dirt under the lawns and leaves on the sidewalk. When I looked back, the plastic house was still glowing faintly at the end of the block. I didn't tell anyone, not Grandma, not the neighbors. But 2 nights later, I woke up to the sound of knocking. Soft, steady, 7 times. I looked out my window. Down the hill, at the end of the street, a single house had its lights on. Its walls shone faintly under the moon. And through the front window, I saw myself, standing there, holding open the door for another kid I didn't recognize. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I truly mean that. If you enjoyed these stories, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That way, you won't miss the next ones. And once again, thank you for walking this dark road with me tonight.